Today we're going to talk about the Fuji X100VI, big surprise, and I'm going to take you through the settings that I use to set up the Fuji for street photography, and just take you through the settings, the menus, the buttons, how I have things configured, and how I truly believe it makes it easier for you to use the camera when you're out and not think a lot about the settings and think more about being in the moment. All right, welcome to the channel. If you don't know by now, I'm Wesley. I'm a photographer. I do street photography all over the world. I travel quite extensively. I've been in LA. I'm going to Baltimore next week. It's for my 9 to 5, let's be honest, but I always bring my Fuji with me, at least one camera, and I try to bring you guys some videos along the way. So with that, today we're going to go into the Fuji X100VI's menus. We're going to go through the button and dial settings, and then I'm going to show you on the camera here, hopefully it'll come across well, how I use those settings to do my photography. All right, so let's get into it. So I've had my hands on the Fuji for about 2 months now, a little over 2 months to be honest with you. And I've really, I've been a Fuji user since the X-T3. I've had the X-T3, X-T4, X-T5, X-H2, X-H2S, X100T, F, V, and 6. So I know the Fuji menus pretty well. I might not know everything though, I'm not going to say I do. There are a lot of people that have different opinions on certain things and certain menu items. And, take it with a grain of salt. If it doesn't work for you, change it. Do something else with it. Look at a few videos on this settings and make your opinion from there. All right. So with that, we're going to get into it. All right, let me plug up my computer. I'm going to show you guys how to do this while I'm at it. So this device it's USB on this end and HDMI on this end. I got a cable right here, which is mini HDMI to full HDMI. I'm going to plug this into this end, that end into my camera, plug it into the back of my badass desktop that I built last week. Start my streaming software, which is called, let me tell you, it's called Streamlabs Desktop. And I'm going to use this software to record the back screen and use this camera to record the audio and overlay the screen so you don't have to look at my ugly face. And we can get going. Let's do it. All right, plugging it in. Plugging it in to the back of my computer. Oh, trying to cramp. Just went to the gym and I'm cramping bad. Plug this into the mini HDMI. Turn it on. Flip it up like that and set it down so that I can operate it and talk at the same time. Okay, I got it set to USB video on the device. I'm going to, will it do 4K? Oh, so it appears that this software only goes to 1080, which is fine for what we got to do today. All right, we can see the back of the camera. Now we're going to get started. Let's get it started, yeah. All right. This is going to be oversized. That's good. Okay. All right, let's go. We are in the menu. As you can tell, I'm in movie mode. Don't ask me why. I'm going to get out of movie mode. Now I'm not in movie mode. All right, so let's go start with the menu system here. We're going to go from the top down. Okay. All right, okay, image quality. For me, I pretty much shoot in RAW. I don't often shoot in JPEG. I like to edit my photos. I'm a photographer. I'm not just a guy using a phone. If I'm gonna use my phone, if I'm gonna shoot JPEG, and anyway, that's just me, I'll stop. So I shoot RAW. I shoot RAW lossless. I would advise it if you'd like to shoot JPEG to shoot Fine plus RAW, which is this setting right here, and that will give you 2 files for each shot you make: a JPEG that's a baked-in image, and a RAW image that you can edit. I personally just shoot RAW because I know I'm going to edit them anyway. I only go down to shooting JPEG when I feel like I need a challenge. As far as lossless compressed, the reason why I use lossless compressed because I haven't seen any image quality differences, and lossless compressed saves data. It's about 45 megs for a RAW photo instead of 85 megs, and I think that's a good idea. So I would advise you use lossless compressed. As far as the film simulation, just pick one. It's going to be a RAW photo, so you can change this in Lightroom. If you guys need me to show you how to change it in Lightroom, let me know, and I'll be glad to do that. I have it in Reality Ace because it's the newest film simulation, so why wouldn't I? Next one is grain effect. I keep the grain effect off. Again, I'm shooting RAW, so if I want to add grain, I'll add it in Lightroom. If you are setting up a custom film simulation or a recipe, you would dial this in, especially if you were shooting JPEG. So I leave all of these off: the grain effect, color, chrome, smooth skin effect I do set to weak. I do not like to see all kinds of different pores and stuff on people's skin. And when I have my Nikon, or when I was using my Nikon more, I often used that skin softening, and it really did help with the photo. It didn't look like a glamour shot, guys. It really did help, I promise. White balance, I have it set to auto, but I also have it set to, sometimes I use it set to ambient priority or white priority. For now, I've been using auto when I'm in photo because I can dial it in Lightroom. When I am shooting video, like right now, I have white balance on the XH2 set to custom. So take that with a grain of salt. Your white balance can change, but for now I have it set to auto. Dynamic range set to 100. I don't mess with the tone curve, color, sharpness in camera because again, I'm shooting RAW. I don't need to do that. Let's talk about clarity. Never, and I mean never, set clarity in your camera, because if you do, it will take you like 1.5 seconds to take a photo every single time. You'll never be able to press the shutter button, rapidly at all, or use a continuous shutter mode at all. So don't use clarity in the camera, even if you're shooting JPEG, unless you're willing to wait that second for it to store. Palette Detect has a lot of videos on that. He will, I would take a look at his videos. Long exposure on, noise reduction on, but I honestly don't often do long exposure photos for street photography unless I'm doing slow shutter drags or pan shots. Color space, you may want to use Adobe. I have just always left my cameras at sRGB. You may want to use Adobe, especially if you're using Lightroom like I am. Pixel mapping, you're not going to do anything with pixel mapping unless you're doing, yes, you have a hot pixel in your sensor. Your sensor needs to be remapped for that, so leave that alone. I'll bring it up. So we could start it if we wanted to, but I don't need to, so I'm not going to. Back into the menu. Select custom setting. Now you would set custom settings if you're setting recipes. I don't have any recipes right now into the camera, but if I were going to, I would set these custom settings to be different recipes. All right. This is where you would edit the custom settings. I just created these 3 to show you how you can do that. And then you would go in here and you could copy and paste and change the name, so on and so forth. If you were setting up your camera and setting up all your custom settings, you would want to enable this auto update, because every change you make while you're in that setting, in one of those custom settings, it would save that change. Once you get it all dialed in though, I would turn that back off like I have it here. Focus area. Right now I'm using tracking. You can change this on the fly. You don't need to change this in the menu, but you can use the back wheel to change it. Single point, go on and so forth until you get the zone and all the different boxes, and then now you're in wide tracking. Wide tracking is what I use on almost every camera that I own, and I have never had any issues with it. And if someone on the comments were to tell me, oh, you use wide tracking, that's why your autofocus didn't work. No, the autofocus didn't work. I should be able to use wide tracking, and the autofocus should also work. Make your cameras work. Don't put a feature in a camera that doesn't work. all right, I'm off my soapbox. Autofocus mode I have them set to all so that I can change them, as you just saw me do with the back wheel. If you didn't like some of them though, you could take them out, you know, so that you were only using one or the other or whatnot. Zone custom settings, I don't mess with this. Autofocus all setting, I mean, you can come in here and take out some of these single points. This is what I was talking about, where you could take some of these out if you wanted to. I haven't had a reason to, so I like having the options available on the command dials. Wrap autofocus enable, I like that because I like to be able to quickly get my autofocus point where I need it to be. I don't ever use pre-autofocus. It takes up too much battery, slows the camera down. Same thing with autofocus eliminator. There's no need for that. It's distracting. The face and eye detect, this is something I turn on and off with a function button, and I'll show you where I set that up at. I turn it on when I'm shooting people, subjects, and if I'm not shooting subjects, which is very, very, very few in between, I would turn that off. Subject detection, I would turn on if I needed to. Right now, there's no need because I don't have a need for that. I'm shooting people, and people, it uses this face and eye detection. It doesn't use subject detection for people. Auto focus and manual focus on. You always want to turn this on. This allows you to half press the shutter button so that you can focus and then further dial it in by moving the manual focus ring on the camera. I would turn this on every single camera. Manual focus assist, I always set the peak red high. That allows you to focus on something and it shows you if you manual focus. Let me take this lens cap off and I will show you what I'm talking about. Hopefully this will record it. Of course, it's dark as can be because I am at f4 and at shutter 500 and my ISO is all the way down. So let me turn it up. Maybe you can see my bad computer. All right, so there's it focusing, half pressed, and it's in. And then if I start moving the focus ring, I can get to it. There we go. Oh, let me turn it back. If I start moving the focus ring, you can see that, and then it'll peak. Well, of course, I'm pointing at something red. It'll peak. See the red right there on the left? It'll peak, showing you what's in focus, what the depth of field is. That's what a focus peaking does. Oh, don't do that. It's like, we don't like that. All right, back to reality. All right, let's get into it. Focus check on. Now this allows you, when you're in manual focus, to press the back command dial. The back command dial is right there, right there. It allows you to press that in and check focus. That's when you're in manual focus. So I'll switch to manual. You know what? Let's just do this, guys. So I'm in manual focus right now. Let me make sure I'm in manual focus. I don't know my camera sometimes. Nope, up is manual focus. I'm in manual focus right now. I go in, I'm half pressed. You don't even need to half press. I'm manually focused and let me just press the back button. Oh, that's a focus check. So that's normal, and that's focus check. And I can just dial the focus in. And then I hit that button again and boom, take the picture. That's how you do it. Hit the button, now you start dialing in your focus. Let me turn it to something. There we go. Now we're in focus on that. Boom, take the shot. All right, that is focus check. Now we're gonna go through. I don't really mess with anything on these right here. Depth of field scale, pixel basis. That's the way I do it. Focus release priority. See how this autofocus C is set to release and autofocus single focus. This is a very typical setup when you're setting up a camera. All right, so that's what it's set to, focus and release. You don't want to set your AFC to focus priority because sometimes you might miss the shot altogether, even if it's just a little bit out of focus. It shouldn't be completely out of focus, like I saw. AF range limiter, you don't want to limit your autofocus range, so you'd only do that if you were trying to do, I wouldn't say macro, you're not going to do macro work on here, but you were trying to, you're manually focused and you know you're only going to be focused at a certain level, you're fixed on your tripod or something, and maybe you would set the limiter on so it doesn't like focus way out in the distance or something, but I would say I would keep that off 90% of the time. Touch screen mode, a lot of people turn this off, but I keep it set to autofocus so I can touch the screen for autofocus if I'm not if the camera's not up to my eye. All right, next thing, we're gonna go down here. I don't mess with these things, guys. Don't mess with any of these things. Self-timer lamp is on. I don't really do a lot of auto exposure bracketing or film simulation bracketing, but so right now they're just set to default, which is, as you can see, this. Photometry, right now I'm using multi. I will use spot sometimes if I have a lot of dynamic light and I want to make sure that the subject is exposed properly and not overexposed or underexposed. I will use spot then and then bring up the shadows as I need. But right now it's set to multi because I'm mostly using face eye detect, and when I do that, it does expose properly for the subject, and it kind of is like using spot when you use face eye detect. All right, shutter, always use manual and electronic so that your camera can make the decision on which shutter mode to use. If you only had it set to manual or only had it set to electronic wouldn't be an issue except for maybe some banding and stuff like that. But if you only had it set to manual, you could only go to a shutter speed of a certain, maybe 1/8,000 right now, or is it 4,000? It's one of the two, and then you got to go on this camera because the leaf shutter, I think it's 4,000. And then from there, you got to change it. You got to go back into electronic manually, or you're not going to be able to take the shot. Flicker reduction, I have it set to first frame, just because if you're shooting neon lights or anything incandescent, anything that has a frequency, you need this to be set, or your lights are going to be all wonky. All right, moving through, we're on the third setting here. Auto ISO 1 is not what I'm using all the time, but some of the time I'll have it set to auto ISO 1, 125 to 800, minimum shutter speed of 1/100. Try not to get motion blur when I'm doing that. Obviously no conversion lenses, so those are off. ND filter is currently off, but it's set to a button, so we can leave that where it's at. Flash settings, don't really mess with the flash. You know, I'll use the onboard flash if I want to, but I don't really mess with the flash on this camera. High speed record, I don't use it a lot on this camera. I use it more on the H2, but that's your 120, your 240 modes, if your camera supports that. And this is where your media is going to record. On this camera, it only has an SD. On the X-H2, for example, it can record to the CF Express card, and then I believe record to the SD card, but it records primarily to the CF Express card, Compact Flash Express. Anyhow, IS mode set to IBIS. You'd only set this if you were locked on a tripod. I don't lock anything on a tripod, so I'm always going to have it set to IBIS and leave it at that. IS boost mode, same thing. I'm never going to have that turned on. Audio settings, this is where you can adjust your audio. I have my limiter on. I have my mic jack set to mic. You can set it to line, but I'm not going to use the line in most of the time. This wind filter is pretty bad, guys. I wouldn't even bother with it. Same thing with the low cut filter. I wouldn't even bother with it. These things right here, though, you're going to make adjustments when you're using an external mic. For example, I'd never ever put it to auto, because if you set it to auto, even with the limiter on, I've had clipping issues. I don't like auto. I manually set my auto on all my cameras, so that way I can expect a certain setting, period. And I've showed you guys how to check this in other videos. And if you need a refresher, let me know. Okay, these are not probably the settings I would use if I did set up a microphone like this into it. It would likely be down a little bit. All right, recording frame indicator set to on. That way you'll know when you're recording. It's a red box around the screen. All right, next settings, we're going to go into our user settings, and this is a very important part. We'll skip format. That's how you format your card. Area settings, date and time, that'll all be set up when you're setting your camera up. My menu settings, this is going to be very, very diverse when it comes to how people use this. I personally have my items. These are the items I have in here. Film simulation, audio settings, smooth skin effect, face eye, self-timer, photometry, flicker reduction, ND filter. These are the things that I have. Sensor cleaning, this is another one. I would always make sure you have it set like this. When switched on, off, when switched off, on. That means when you turn the camera off, it will clean the sensor using vibration, ultrasonic vibrations. All right. Again, like I said, these are very, people use different things. This is the way I have it set up. But again, I don't use this a lot for video, but this is how I have my menu set up. These are very personal things, though, personal parts of the menu. Shutter count. See how many shots. Oh, I've shot 900 shots with this bad boy already. And then, of course, if you're going to do firmware, reset it, yada yada. Sound setup. Don't really do a whole lot here. I just make sure the autofocus beep is turned off. No one likes that annoying ass beep. Period. You don't need it on. Same thing with all these other ones. The electronic shutter sound, I have it set to 1, and I have it set to the second setting for. And I honestly might turn that off, but it's not a big deal. Screen setup, this is a very personal thing as well. I would just do whatever you feel is necessary. I'm just gonna run through the screen and let you look at it and see my settings. There's not a lot done here. The biggest item you would need to look at is this one. Preview, exposure, white balance in manual mode. So there's an option to do preview white balance off or preview exposure white balance. If you are shooting with a flash indoors in very low light, you might want to set it to off. What that'll do is it'll show you more so what the scene looks like, but you need to pay attention to your exposure meter to understand exactly where your exposure is, because it's going to look like it's exposed properly, but it might be way underexposed in your exposure meter. And you have to look at your flash as well. It basically turns off when you have it on like this, like I have it on, what you see through the viewfinder is what the final picture is going to look like for the most part. All right, you're not going to worry about these. Electronic level setting, you can have it on. I have it on right now on my video on this camera, but I don't have it on this one. Framing guidelines, if you need to follow your rule of thirds, you turn that on. Focus scale units, you know what, I actually turn mine to feet, to be honest with you, and I'm going to turn it to feet right now because I am in the United States and I don't know what meters is. I do know what meters is, I'm just kidding. All right, custom display, custom settings. This is just telling you what items you can pick when you look through either your viewfinder or your back screen. These are the ones that I have turned on right now. Of course, if Paltatech was watching this, he'd be like, what about your histogram, bro? You got to learn your histogram. I know I need to, but right now it's off. It's not off on this camera. I can see my histogram and everything's in the middle. It's pulled a little bit to the white, but on this one, this is a street camera. I'm not really messing with that kind of stuff. All right, going through anything else? Yeah, this is pretty much how everything's set up. Nothing really to worry about. Now, the next big one under the wrench is your button dial settings. And this is important because this is how you kind of set up, how you're going to use your camera when you use it. So with that, we'll get into this. Focus lever is the back little joystick. I have it set to when I push it, it goes to the center, and when I move it, it sets to edit so that I can change my type of focus. Change my from tracking, all those ones we saw earlier, tracking, single point, zone, that kind of thing. That's what it's set to do when I just push the stick in any direction. All right, quick menu, again, this is a very personal thing. I have it set to 16 slots, and I'll show you my quick menu later. Same thing with this one. Will it show? Oh, here it goes. Here's my quick menu. Autofocus, dynamic range, white balance, film sim, image quality, image size, ISO, noise, highlight tone. If I was dialing in settings, I'd want these shadow tones and stuff available, so they are. Subject detection, EVC brightness, I have it set to 0 because I want it to be accurate to what I'm looking at. Turn face and eye detect off here, and my self timer, which it's redundant because I have it set in different places. Going back to my video, which is less items, I have it set to, these are just a few things I have on here. I'm not using this for video much, guys, so honestly, it's so I can change my frames, change my ISO, change my aperture, and change a few settings on here, but it's really not much to it. That takes you through everything but let's get through to the function settings. And there's these next two, command dial and function settings, are pretty important. So the function setting, I have the top button in front of my exposure comp dial and to the right of my shutter dial set to self timer. This is if I'm doing like slow drags or slow shutter speed stuff. I have it on a tripod, I put the timer on 2 seconds, I hit the shutter, and I let the shake go away before it takes the shot. I can turn that on easily from here. I have my front button, where the lever is to turn the ND filter on. I have that set to my face eye auto detect on and off. So I can quickly turn my face and eye auto detect off and on. These touch functions I don't use, so I'm just gonna go past them because as you can see, my touch function is off. Okay, this is how you do back button autofocus. I have the AEL, AFL set to AF on. I have my rear dial set to focus check, as I showed you earlier. And my selector here set to ND, which I would highly advise. It allows you to quickly use your ND. And my Q menu is left as a Q menu. All right. Again, you can set these up however you want. That's how I have it set up. Command dial settings. All right, the front one is set to my aperture. I set my Nikons like this too because the Nikons are backwards. It's got ISO and exposure comp, so I can click the wheel in, and just like I did focus check in the back, and I can click the wheel in the front and change between them all. If I'm in the mode I'll talk to you about here in a second. And then the back one's set to my shutter speed. So a lot of people like to change everything manually from the top dials. I do that sometimes. But a lot of times if I'm on the go and I want to keep the camera up to my eye, I want to be able to change these quickly right here so that I can dial them in. But what you do is you set your camera to, you set your ISO to C command, so command dial, think about that. You set your shutter to T, don't know why it's T not C, all the other ones are C, and you can set your aperture to A. And I'll show you why. You're not actually in A. It's actually, I have it set to something different. So if you go down to these you're not going to mess around with much. These are not going to, you shoot without a card, always turn that off. You don't want to take pictures without a card. Focus ring, leave that alone. Focus ring operation, leave that alone. Control ring setting, I have it set to standard. It changes the default option of the control ring depending on what you're in. If you have pressed the shutter, manual focus. If you're not pressing the shutter, it's set to that conversion between 35, 50, and 70 millimeters. This is kind of a crop mode, if you will. All right, this is the big setting right here. In button and dial settings on page 2, aperture ring setting A, set it to command. If you set it to command, then you can change your aperture with your front command dial, your shutter with your back command dial, and you can press in your front command dial to go to your ISO. So a lot of times when I'm in like a very brightly lit area, I will use the front for aperture. I will leave the ISO at 125 base ISO and the back for shutter. If I'm in a very low light area, I set my aperture to f2. I press the button and leave the front command dial on ISO and the back on shutter. That way I'm turning my ISO up to let more light in or to boost the light, and my back command dial to shutter to turn the shutter down if it's in a lower light area, or up if I'm in a brighter lit area. I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah, pretty much everything. I really don't mess around with these things here. So with that, I'm going to go back into here and show you what I'm talking about. Now, let's see if I can do this here. I'm gonna front press this button in and see it switch to F and ISO. So if I'm in a low lit area, I'm gonna leave it on F2 and I'm adjusting this and I'm adjusting this. If I'm in a well lit area, I'm gonna turn this all the way down to 125 and I'm gonna press that front button again. And now I'm changing this. If I want to go and I want to shoot auto, I would change, say, the ISO to auto, and it would be in one of those auto modes. But you really don't need to do that. Watch this. Let me hit the front button. Now I'm in ISO. Let me just keep turning the ISO up. Once it gets to the top amount, it goes into an auto mode. So you can switch between all your 3 auto ISO modes and in manual ISO just by using the front command dial. You never really need to turn ISO to auto. I would just keep it where it's at on C. Now shutter, you might want to manually change the shutter right here to say F, 1/15 if you're trying to do slow shutter stuff. Otherwise, I'll leave it in T and I'll adjust it here. That's it, guys. That's everything. That's how I'll set this bad boy up. Let me stop the recording. That is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on how I set up my Fuji for street photography and general photography. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Please drop me a follow, subscribe, like, hit the like button. I don't know, do the things that YouTube wants you to do so that, people can start seeing these videos more. Support me, guys. I really appreciate it. I want to keep doing this, and you guys are continuing to motivate me. But when you guys stop motivating me, I'm probably going to stop doing it. Let's be honest. That's it for this week. I'm out of here. The X-H2 has been recording for 36 minutes, non-stop on 4K, 23.96 without a problem. If you didn't know, now you know. Yay, yay. Let me stop ranting. That's it. I'm out of here.